Earlier this week, I decided to wear one hat for every retro game news story we had. Turns out it was a busy week. The Ayaneo Pocket Ace is live on Indiegogo with the earliest bird pricing of $340. They can't afford to sell it any lower. That's bare minimum. The base model has 8 gigabytes of RAM and 128 gigabytes of internal storage. 0916B linear surge motor, beep boop, which is apparently just a very geeked up vibration motor that's similar to the HD Rumble in a Switch or the HD Rumble 2, something along those lines. It's sort of like newer generation Rumble. Now they've absolutely smashed their Indiegogo flexible funding goal of $6,700 US. They beat that by 1,438%. They got 54 days left. Now there's 4 models of the Pocket Ace. The 8GB RAM model at $340 US, the 12GB RAM model at $420, the 16 gig at $500, and the limited edition retro style at a whopping $600 US. And that's early bird pricing too. You don't get that forever. It's going up to $700 when this campaign is over. Woo-wee! Now, $700 US, that is just tone deaf. I'm gonna be honest. The Odin 2 portal is half of that. The color options for the Pocket Ace are Light Blade White, Shadow Dance Black, and Retro Power. I'm gonna be dancing with the shadows of a bankruptcy attorney. Now, we all expected this kind of pricing. You know, $350 is very on par. Ayaneo is definitely more of a luxury brand in the retro handheld scene. They're sort of up there with Ayn. The problem is that Ayaneo is notorious for delivering unfinished products in these early batch Indiegogo campaigns. If you want to save money and you want to buy at the lowest price, then you're paying with the uncertainty of if it's going to be a finished product or not. The earlier ones have hardware issues, software issues. You just never know what you're going to get. If you want to wait for them to iron all that out, then you're paying full price, and that's starting at $460 for the base model. That's $120 more than the Indiegogo price. Now, to give Ayaneo credit, they make very high quality products. They made the Pocket DMG, which is considered to be one of the best gaming experiences in a vertical form factor that you can find. And the Pocket Ace is no different. While it does have an IPS display, it's apparently a very, very high quality IPS panel. And there's also no OLED options that are available at this screen size. 4.5 inches at a 3:2 ratio. It also has an extremely powerful chipset that is even capable of running PS3 games. Pretty insane and a little bit overpowered. But also, here's the kicker. There's no headphone jack. Yep, you heard that right, no headphone jack. You gotta use the USB-C port to get audio. Now, this isn't Ayaneo's first rodeo forgetting to include a headphone jack. They did that with the Pocket Micro, that $200 Game Boy Micro style device, but that one was even worse because you couldn't use USB-C headphones with it. So I've been grilling Ayaneo here a little bit. If you can't tell, I kind of disagree with their business practices. They do something that I like to call influencer bait, where they send influencers these very expensive products for free, and then the influencers make reviews on them. And obviously they're great products, right? And the average person just isn't gonna be able to justify buying it because it's twice as much as very comparable options from Retroid, Ayn, even Ambernick. It's just a very interesting approach that it's not for everybody and it's not for most people. But it's for some people, and that some people isn't me. Anyways, that's my thoughts on the Pocket Ace. It's definitely one of the handhelds of all time. Might be good, might be bad, who knows? Continuing on the Ayaneo train, they're also giving details for the Pocket S2, the sequel to their original Pocket S, or Pockets as Mr. Tech Dweeb says. They're releasing the, quote, long-awaited Pocket S2 this month. This time they're bringing the real evolution of the Pocket S with a better 2K screen, larger battery, more comfortable feel, more sensitive and a Hall effect middle stick. Is there a middle stick? Bro, you guys are late. I already got my middle stick. The fucking meat cannon handheld. Pricing is still TBD, but with the Snapdragon G3 Gen 3 and a 6.3 inch screen, knowing Ayaneo, This thing's probably gonna be $449 early bird pricing. That's my prediction, lock it in, and we'll learn more about the Pocket S2 when it goes live this month. Powkiddy has 2 new devices in the works, the V40 Max and the V40 Pro. I didn't actually watch the video, I just put the story into my doc. What is that D-pad? Now this thing looks like an abomination to any retro handheld enjoyer. They got the works on these things. They have a very special D-pad, tic-tac shaped ABXY buttons that are kind of connected together, RGB rings, you gotta have those, and a little trifecta pyramid of start select function. And of course, top it all off with 3D games printed on it. Oh yeah. These things are crazy. Powkiddy is on their psychotic arc. This is wild. Now, outside of the insane smorgasbord of design decisions, the internals seem to be pretty normal. It's featuring, you guessed it, a Rockchip RK3326 chip, the same one that's in the My Mini, same one that's in the Battle XP G350, the same one that's in the game console U8, the same one that's in so many handhelds, and Powkiddy's running it back. Powkiddy said, I still got more in me. Give me another Rockchip. I'm gonna make it work. I still got a little fight left in me. Features 1 whole gigabyte of RAM, 256 gig storage, 4-inch 640 by 480 panel, 3200 milliamp hour battery, and ArcOS. Oh yeah. Yeah, Powkiddy's laying an egg with this one, but here's a crazy hack to get PS2 and GameCube emulation for under $100. I stumbled upon this Reddit thread that's jam-packed with strats to get the best bang for the buck emulation for under $100, and these strats are pretty sick. One of the strats involves getting a subsidized prepaid phone for $55, and that can have a Snapdragon 7S Gen 2 chipset with 256 gigs of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM, and then just canceling it. That's like such a cheat code. And then add in a nice telescopic phone controller, and you can rip through GameCube and PS2 for under $100. This is an S tier cheat code, and there's tons of other hacks in this Reddit thread here, so go ahead and check that out if you're interested in gaming on the cheap. The MagicX Mini 028 V2 is officially out, say that 3 times fast. It's a slightly revamped version of the Mini 028 V1. It's far from a huge upgrade. This is more of a refinement of the original 28. They've tweaked a couple things like the USB-C ports being flush with the shell instead of inset like the original one. They've improved the D-pad and shoulder buttons, so it should feel more tactile and satisfying to anybody who felt like the original ones were a little too mushy. The only other thing they mentioned is adjusting the tax rate, but the actual product seems to be a very slightly revamped version. The original Mini 028 I fell in love with. I'm actually playing that like every single day. It has a great balance of quality, performance, and a toy feeling where I don't feel weird bringing it around and being a little scrappy with it. I've just found the Mini 028 to be a very charming handheld, and also the fact that it runs Android just takes it to a new level in terms of emulator performance and just general game compatibility. Big fan of that tiny little handheld. The latest Rocknix nightly build now supports the Retroid Flip 2. That's right, we can now run Rocknix on the Retroid Pocket Flip 2, and it fully supports the closing lid to go to sleep functionality. Rocknix is very unique because you can actually run it off of a micro SD card, so you don't need to flash a new OS to your whole system. You can just put in the SD card and then it'll boot into Rocknix. Now, the biggest benefit of using Rocknix right now is actually the emulation performance in PS3 and Xbox. So if you're looking specifically to play PS3 and Xbox games, then you'd want to install Rocknix on an SD card and then load your ROMs onto that. I don't know how complex the process is, and I know that it does take a lot of time for shaders to compile in those higher end games, especially if you're running them off a micro SD card. But if you're interested in tinkering, highly recommend checking out Rocknix. Over in emulation news, Winlator contains a Trojan virus. That's right, Folks, the news broke earlier last week that Winlator and all of its forks were infected by a virus. And this wasn't something that many casual players were aware of because it was a Trojan virus. So it was hiding within a very specific program that you had to run in order to launch the virus. Now, to break down the situation, from my understanding, is that it's a Trojan virus called Floxif. This virus was hiding within a program called Test D3D, which is a benchmark for testing Direct 3D. This thing kind of hitched a ride into Winlator without the developer knowing. Nobody knew this wasn't a malicious attack on behalf of the developer. It was just an infected benchmark program that ended up hitching a ride into Winlator. So what happens when you run the Test D3D application is it replaces DLL files of installed games and system files. And that causes games to hard crash because they relied on a DLL file that's a virus now. And from my understanding, this virus isn't extracting data from you or trying to steal your social security number. No, it's just breaking a bunch of stuff. So it's something that you wouldn't want to bring on your computer because it could just break everything. Now, a tech-savvy Reddit user actually ran a full experiment to test this Winlator virus and purposefully infect files and then transfer them to a sandbox PC. Now, the result of this experiment actually found that there were no infected files that triggered any antivirus or showed to be compromised in any way. That includes DLL files and .exe files. And this whole experiment was a very specific scenario, so it doesn't rule out that other systems might have been compromised. Other scenarios might affect if the virus is functioning or isn't functioning. In this case, it showed that there were no problems at all. A very interesting finding and a fascinating read if you're interested in the technical side of the Winlator virus situation. This virus has been around for at least 10 years now, so many antiviruses are pretty familiar with Floxif and are able to kind of snipe it. Luckily, the developer Bruno released a hotfix that removed the infected benchmark containing the Trojan virus. So what happened when everybody found out about this? Well, they got their pitchforks. People went completely berserk on Bruno, tearing him apart. It was a lot of egos, both on people's side and a little bit on Bruno's side, because he was ignoring the people flagging that Floxif was there before this happened. People noticed it, but he thought it was a false positive. Now, in Bruno's defense, I don't think that people realized this isn't his fault. Floxif was actually in other Windows emulators as well. Not only the forks of Winlator, but in other Windows emulators like Exagear. This isn't just him. This was multiple developers. This file was just being passed around. So I think he definitely caught the brunt of it, so he's paused development indefinitely. I think this whole situation is kind of a forest fire that got a little bigger than it needed to get, but it really just highlights that this should have stayed an open source project. The developer made it closed source with version 7.1, and we're now on version 10, so it's been over 3 major iterations that have remained closed source, and if it was open source, this malware would have been caught far sooner and it wouldn't have blown up to this scale. I really feel bad for everyone that was affected by this situation, both the developer and anyone who had to deal with the virus directly. Fortunately, the virus was removed from any recently updated Winlator distros and forks and everything. If you update, then you don't have to deal with having that lurker just kind of like waiting for you to launch it. But this is actually a great opportunity to experiment with other Winlator forks. I've been playing with Winlator Winebox 64 and getting some pretty incredible performance in Fallout New Vegas. And there's another fork that a lot of people are really speaking highly about called Winlator Bionic. This is kind of a big reset for Winlator right now, so I would take the opportunity to potentially experiment with other Winlator forks, specifically Bionic. In more emulation scene drama, the Wii Homebrew Channel is dead. It has been archived. I didn't even know it was still alive. That's right, there's been a big blow up in the Wii Homebrew scene A lot of news articles have been picking up on this and totally mincing words, changing the narrative, misinterpreting things. It's just a messy situation overall. One of the developers made a statement that includes mention of some complex development decisions, malicious code theft, copyright infringement, and just a weird situation overall. If you want a little more straightforward take on it, I would check out the Modern Vintage Gamer video. That kind of sums up the situation from a developer's point of view. It sounds like the Homebrew channel hasn't seen any real updates in over 10 years, practically considered obsolete since it was finished over a decade ago. Remember, this is a system that was released almost 20 years ago. So I don't think that the whole libOGC not attributing Artems for kind of copying their code really changes anything, to be honest. It just kind of fogs up the whole situation. This whole situation really just boils down to attribution and copyright infringement. It's kind of something that should have been ironed out between the parties, but I guess we're here. 15, 20 years later, doesn't change anything for us. Dolphin and Emulation shouldn't be impacted. It seems to be isolated to the Wii Homebrew scene. Nothing's really changing here. Let me know what you think of the Wii Homebrew channel being archived in the comments below. I think they just need to hug it out. The 3DS emulator Azahar has a huge update. Their latest release on GitHub has an absolute novel-sized changelog, and some of these features and upgrades seem pretty awesome. There's a turbo feature which increases the emulation speed. The maximum value for the 3D slider was increased from 100% to 255%. That's maximum overdrive for you. And over on the Android side, there's a ton of UI and quality of life upgrades, including a long press menu, which allows you to access the save data, DLC, textures, mods, etc. And they added quick save to the UI instead of having to go through a hotkey. There's just so many changes. I could sit here all day, but you should check it out if you're interested in 3DS emulation. Over in game news, GTA 6 is delayed. Who saw that coming? Raise your hand. Me. It's now coming May 26th of 2026. Unfortunately, they missed their fall 2025 deadline just a little bit. Let's be honest, I think we all saw this coming. And now that it's scheduled for May 2026, every other game that was planning to release then is quaking in their boots, pushing their release date probably another 6 months ahead of that. Banjo-Kazooie Nostalgia 64 is releasing this month. And a new release date trailer was also shared. This is a complete overhaul mod for Banjo-Kazooie for the N64. And apparently the game takes you across tons of different levels from different games, like GoldenEye 007, DK64, I know about that one, Yoshi's Story, and Super Mario 64. And it even contains a level based on Project Dream, which was an earlier unreleased version of Banjo-Kazooie. It looks like an incredible mod with tons of content in it. And that's coming out early access on May 7th for supporters like Patreon and stuff, or public release on May 17th. Keep a sharp eye out for this one. If you have any sort of nostalgia for the collectathons of the N64 era, this one is gonna speak to you. May 17th or May 7th. And just a public service announcement, friendly reminder, Abandonware games are available and were great in Winlator. The website myabandonware.com has tons of good games. Over 30,000 old games that are just downloadable for free. And these games are all free because they're considered abandonware, which means that publishers aren't selling them anymore, so you can just nab them. Controller support may vary from game to game, but there are some classics on this site. A couple of them being Chex Quest, Need for Speed Underground 2, Most Wanted, Silent Hill, Prince of Persia. There's so many good games on this site. And these older games are prime for Winlator. So I'd highly recommend checking out myabandonware.com and grabbing some games. Over in port news, Diddy Kong Racing Decompilation is in progress. It's currently almost 85% decompiled as of recording this video, and we're in the final stretch here. We can see the finish line, so hopefully this comes to fruition soon, because Diddy Kong Racing is an absolute banger. Having that fully decompiled means that when it does get ported to other consoles, and other systems, you know, like Linux, Android, Windows, Mac, then we'll be able to upscale it, add HD texture packs, add 60 FPS mods, you know, uncapped frame rate. These developers are essentially doing to Diddy Kong Racing what other devs did to Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Super Mario 64, and how those games got their own kind of like port projects called Chip of Harkinian and Two Ship to Harkinian and whatever the Super Mario 64 one's called. This one is going to have its own project and whole scene. So it's pretty awesome. Really looking forward to the full gamut of Diddy Kong Racing ports that will be flooding later this year. SteamWorld Dig is now on Portmaster and it's on sale on GOG for $1. That's right, $1 whole dollar. I know it's gonna be tough. I know times are tough right now, but if you can rummage around in that couch and dig up $1, then this one's worth it. SteamWorld Dig is a classic Metroidvania game from 2013. This being on Portmaster and for $1, definitely worth checking out if you have a device that supports Portmaster. Speaking of Portmaster, PokeMMO is now on Portmaster. It's not officially on the website, but it's on GitHub. This is huge news. PokeMMO is a very popular fan-made multiplayer online game that brings together multiple generations of Pokemon into one MMO experience. This one does need internet access, so I know that there's a lot of devices that do support Portmaster but don't have built-in internet. Make sure that your device either has built-in internet, or if you don't mind putting in a Wi-Fi dongle and playing that way, then you can do that. But if you do have a Portmaster device, then check out this GitHub page and see what compatibility is looking like. It's looking pretty good. I know that I'm gonna be picking this one up. And over in Corn news, the bigger Corn SD card doesn't work with the smaller Corn SD card on a 3DS. Yeah, I don't really know what's going on here, but this is probably one of the funniest bootleg SD cards I've ever seen. Make sure you don't fall for the Corn cards. And our game of the week is Legend of Zelda Wind Waker for the GameCube. Or if you want to be a dastardly dog, then you can play it on the Wii U. I've been playing this one on my Retroid Pocket Flip 2, and it's been a lovely experience. This is one of the Zelda games that I didn't really play through when I was younger. Something about the graphics and the whole sailing side of things just didn't really speak to me. But nowadays, this game holds up. The graphics look excellent, especially when you upscale them. They scale very well. HD texture packs make them look even better. And there's also a better Wind Waker patch where you can get the regular camera stick controls, faster sailing, customize your character, skip cutscenes, so much stuff. Tons of quality of life improvements that just make the game even better. So if you've never played this one, or if you have and you want to re-experience it, definitely look into widescreen, upscaling, HD texture packs, and better Wind Waker. Those are 4 things that will just breathe new life into this one, really put the wind in those sails. And if you're looking for a tutorial on how to install HD texture packs in GameCube games, I just so happen to have made one. If you want to watch that video, you can click the link in the top corner here. That's all for today's retro game news. If you like the video, subscribe if you want to see more like this, and I will see you next week for another episode of the Retro Game Zone. Say bye. Later.